Look at that. We're live. I guess it's time. Actually, let me grab my desk real quick. What's up, team? It's just me tonight. We'll get the podcast started, and then we're going to have a great time with just me monologuing. We'll see if my co-hosts join in the chat. But I'll go ahead and get the... Which button is it? Nope. I do apologize for this. I just had to figure out which button it was. I hope it's not too loud in y'all's ears. Okay, all right. I think we're ready to get started on the actual podcast. What is up, team? And welcome into a solo episode of the Technical Foul Podcast. I am not joined by either of my co-hosts, neither Jack, who usually sits in this seat, or JP, who usually sits in that seat. Just me tonight. Jack was a planned out-of-town absence, and then JP was a 7:45, 7:30 text. I think I have the stomach bug. And so it's just me tonight. I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about. I will not be talking about the NBA. Thank you, Hip Hams, in the chat for saying you're here for me. I hope we have a fun night tonight. I think we may be doing a mock draft. We'll see. I will not be talking about the NBA. The text that was sent was JP said, I'm out sick. And I said, well, I may do a mock draft for fun. And Jack said, that's good. We don't want 2 hours of Sanders talking NBA, which was a little disrespectful, but also very fair. So potentially a mock draft. I might take a look at the NBA, and I just know that there were some, when I say take a look, I mean I might talk about it for 30 seconds. That's about the extent of my NBA knowledge. The thing I'm most scared about is the filler, where I want to look something up, but have to put my mic down, and so we just have awkward silence. We'll see how I handle that. Haven't figured that one out yet. But I think we're going to start with how I'm doing, which is how we always start. Usually led by Jack, but I'm doing great. My youngest brother had a band concert tonight, which I got to go to and was really cool. I'm a lifelong band person. My mom is also in the chat. Thanks, Mom, for attending and being active. But yeah, I'm a lifelong band person, which is really cool. I guess that's kind of like a big part of my love of sports, and a lot of my friends who love sports. One of my good sports buddies is through band, especially when you're in band in college, a primary outlet for that is through sports. So, band kids are one of the few people that attend every football game and are there from an hour before kickoff until the game ends. Whether or not, I remember specifically the Arnett year when LSU, I believe it was, came to town. I believe that was the Arnett year, and just smoked us. It was hot. And I did not want to be there. I think Malik Neighbors had 1 million receiving yards. Did not want to be there, but because I was in band, I was. And so it was fun to be at a band concert tonight for my youngest brother, who's also a band person. We're all a band family. That was really enjoyable. I'm doing great. Headed down to Jackson tomorrow. Was going to go to a concert, an outdoor concert, but as many people in the Southwest know and Mississippi know, storms are moving through and have been the past couple of days, and so that's not happening. No outdoor concert. Instead, I'm going to get to go hang out with family, and me and my youngest brother, again, will be going to a card shop. We've both been getting into trading cards, which is really fun. We've enjoyed that. I really have enjoyed it. I opened up a couple on draft night, pulled a Fernando Mendoza, pulled a couple serialed cards, which are cards that are numbered out of, I think it was out of 350, so semi-rare, which those are pretty cool cards to pull. But yeah, I'm excited to go to that and kind of see what's out there as far as trading cards go, because it's really cool. I've been watching a lot of YouTube about it because I think it's really fun to the nostalgia, I think, is what I love the most about it, is seeing players that I had kind of forgotten about. Even rolling through it and seeing cards that I got in 2017, so almost 10 years ago. When I was a teenager, there was a lot of nostalgia that hit, and that was really fun for me. And so I'm excited to kind of get back into that now and start collecting cards again, cards that I know I can look at in 10 years, and that'll be really nostalgic again. but that'll be a really fun part of the weekend. And then, of course, playing angle ball as we do whenever we can in Jackson. For those of you that listen and know what angle ball is, you know how fun it is, and you know how much the three of us enjoy it. And that was kind of a big part of how we became friends, was through that game and through that sport. And we'll get through that this weekend, and then, yeah, be back in Starkville. Did I say Southwest? Sorry. As my mom corrected me, Southeast. I did say Southwest. I'm going to, for the first time tonight, we'll claim the I'm by myself and trying to keep my brain moving faster than my mouth. The One Musketeer. Thank you, Genevieveson. Hey, if you're in here, maybe we talk a little MLB. I don't know how long you'll be in the chat, but I saw that your Cubs, well, not saw, like we both saw, everyone saw his Cubs beat my Padres. Y'all were the first team to score a run on Mason Miller, so congratulations for that. That was really sad for me. I saw there was some debate around it. Oh, it's because I think France was playing third base and not Machado. So, there's a big asterisk next to that run, and always will be. Just remember that. It doesn't count. It's a fake run. You didn't even win the game. We still won it. So it's crazy y'all beat us in 2 games, and neither of those games was the one that you actually did something no one has done and scored a run on Mason Miller. But I've been getting, it's good to see. Yeah, he's celebrating it in the chat. A big win for the Cubs. And not as big. I know my brother, who's also an MLB fan, is in the chat. His team did not win big this weekend. He's a Tigers fan. Tigers played the Braves. Tigers did not get the win, unfortunately. I think Braves won the first 2 games, and then the Tigers won today, which he did enjoy that part of it. But, yeah, I'm doing great. My co-hosts are not. I'll start. Jack is out of town, like I said, in a planned absence, but I think that's been going pretty well. I'll leave him to talk about that next show. And then JP texted 15 minutes before and said he had stomach bug. And so here we are. I think where I do want to start is an NFL mock draft, because I have been I want to do a 2027 mock draft, not because I am a ball knower and I'm going to get it right, but I really want to be able to look back on this in a year and see how wrong it was. That's what I think I'm most excited for, because I see people who post these, and I don't judge or critique people who had Lenore Sellers. I had Lenore Sellers going first overall, I think, earlier, in halfway through the fall of college football. And so I want to be able to look back and laugh at how funny it is, and not judge, because I think that's it's funny. It's not like people are going to be wrong. Nobody's going to get it right. Us in whatever in April. Nobody's going to get it right in April. So I want to do one of those just for kicks and giggles. And then I probably won't be live for long. I think probably 45 minutes is all I've got in me. I've never done a monologue or a solo show. I'm not Josh Pate. I cannot do that. I don't have the bandwidth mentally to keep my thoughts together and create coherent content. But we're here to get some shorts for the TikTok and for Instagram. And then we're here to do a mock draft so that come next April, I can point to this and say, LOL, look how stupid I was, or how smart I was to see this coming. But we're going to go ahead and dive in now that we've done our intro and start with the mock draft. The Arizona Cardinals currently, according to PFF, that's the website we're using, have the first overall draft for next year. And, man, it's going to be interesting. I'm going to go ahead and pull up their roster. And my iPad is also close to death, so hopefully it powers through with me for this show. They drafted Jeremiah Love with their only first-round pick this year, which, as I'm doing this mock draft, I guess I'll talk a little bit about this last draft, because I have to fill the time and fill the space by myself. They drafted Jeremiah Love with their first round pick, and their only first-round pick, which I was not a huge fan in the moment. I was not a huge fan of that and will not be a huge fan of that. I am just such a adamant believer in the fact that offensive line creates run game and not... Oh, I'm going to plug my iPad. I'm going to pause this. I'm going to plug my iPad in over here. I believe that run game is created by offensive line and not running back. I think that you look at guys like Najee Harris, who was a first-round draft pick, and I just don't think that he moved the needle enough individually. I think that their run game was... He was a 1,000-yard rusher, but it was because they had a decent offensive line in Pittsburgh. But then you look at a guy like Ashton Jeanty, who was a first-round draft pick behind a poor offensive line. did not go well. So that's why I'm such an adamant believer in that, but I'm going to work and get this Cardinals depth chart pulled up. Let's see. I'm going to try to at least. Schubert. They go, like I said, Jeremiah Love. A lot of people mocked tackle there, which I would have loved, right? You set up for success for your future quarterback, whoever it is. But instead, they go Jeremiah Love, and they do go guard, offensive line in the second round, which I love for them. But looking at them, they've got Marvin Harrison Jr. on the roster. The top player on the PFF big board is Jeremiah Smith. He is, I would say, he has been up there as the top guy since he was a freshman. He's been outstanding. He's gotten the label generational. That will remain to be seen. I don't like using the label generational because you can't use it every year as people do. That's not how being generational works, and yet people do use it that regularly. So I'm not the biggest fan of using that label so regularly, but they don't have their quarterback, and they've got, in theory, in this draft, the first overall pick. And so I'm going to have them go quarterback, and I'm going to have them go QB1 on my board, or in the PFF big board, Dante Moore. Dante Moore, first overall to the Cardinals. Now he comes in. I think they got to continue to work on that offensive line through free agency, through the second round. You hope that Chase Pasantis was a hit and that he works out there. And now you've got a quarterback, and you've got elite weapons in Trey McBride. You've got Marvin Harrison Jr. going into year 3. You will have to decide whether or not you're going to pick up his fifth-year option after this year, which I assume they will. They took him 4th overall 2 years ago. You cannot be out on him that quick. And then you've got Jeremiah Love in the backfield, and now all of a sudden you've got a second-round pick. You've been working the offensive line through free agency. I've already talked in depth about how heavily invested they are on defense over the last 3 years, including, I believe, their first 4 picks last year, all being on defense. First rounder, Walter Nolan, a second rounder, Will Johnson out of Michigan, a fifth rounder, they've just a fourth rounder, Cody Simon. They invested very heavily on defense over the last 3 years. And so now I think is in the second year in a row they go offense and they get Dante Moore. Dante Moore is going to be the quarterback at Oregon this year. They've got championship aspirations. His weapons this year will continue to be elite. DeCorian Moore will be going into his second year. Former 5-star. They have Evan Stewart, former A&M, not an A&M legend. Jack has been quite clear about that. I've tried to throw out the A&M legend about Evan Stewart. He's pretty adamant that he is not an A&M legend, not an Aggie legend. But look for Dante Moore to have another great season, and he would have been QB2 in this class, and an argument would have been made for QB1. I expect him to be QB1 next year. But we know what we all thought last year about quarterback, and look at where we are now. At number 2, the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins signed Malik Willis. They signed Malik Willis in the offseason to be their quarterback, and then I think kind of hurt him by shipping off all of his weapons. They ship off Jalen Waddle. And so I'm kind of concerned about what kind of support they're really giving him. They do bring back Devon Achane. Despite people theorizing that he would be traded to a contender, the Texans were potentially in the market, the Chiefs were potentially in the market. He's going to be there in 2026, which Jack and our good friend and A&M fan Chromie, who's often in the chat, are both very sad about. They're sad that he will be trapped in Miami. They've often asked for Achane to be freed, free Achane. But at number 2, man, this is going to be tough. I really think defense could be where they end up going. They've got 2 former first-rounders in Chop Robinson and Kenneth Grant, but I think they roll with Malik Willis. They say he's their guy. They spent 2 third-rounders on wide receivers. They got an offensive lineman in Caden Proctor in their first round. Their second-round pick was Jacob Rodriguez, a linebacker. Their other first-round pick was Chris Johnson out of San Diego State. That was the first-rounder from Denver in the Jalen Waddle trade. And so here, I think I'm going to go Jeremiah Smith. I know I just said that I was going to go defense. It really comes down to Colin Simmons or Jeremiah Smith. It comes down to, do you think they go get a weapon, or do you go think they get a defender for that defense? And I think I'm going to go with weapon. I think that regardless on whether or not Malik Willis shows enough this year to prove that he is the guy going forward, I think that they're going to get a piece for him or for whoever the quarterback of the future is. And I think that Jeremiah Smith is not generational, because I don't throw around the word generational, but I do think he's fantastic. Was fantastic his freshman year, his sophomore year. He will be fantastic again in year 2 with Julian Sayin at the helm. And so I'm going to go Jeremiah Smith at wide receiver, which that's got to be I'm trying to think. I don't want to go and pull up. You know, I will, because this is my show tonight, and I'm going to do what I love, and I love to look at old drafts. And so I'm going to see when the last time a wide receiver was drafted that high would have been. And while I do that, yes, Jack, this is your chair. Welcome in. I felt awkward sitting in my chair. It's not the first time I've sat in your chair. Let's see, pick 4, pick 2. Travis Hunter, if you consider him a wide receiver, was taken at pick 2 last year in the 2025 draft. But I cannot remember off the Jamar Chase at 5. DJ Moore at 24. Corey Davis at 5 in 2017. So it will be, if he were to go this high, it would be the first time a wide receiver only has gone that high in 10 years, at least. So I'll go Jeremiah Smith. Yeah, Jack, this is your chair. I'm just kind of trying to get comfortable. I didn't even turn the lights on. I got back to the studio and sat down and I just went live, because I didn't really know where the night was going to take me. Take us, the viewers, all 2 of y'all currently in the chat. So I just kind of hit the live button and thought about, I may end up making graphics live if we end up going a direction I'm not expecting, but we shall see. It's going to be a rambly night. At 3, the New York Jets. This is another... PFF has their only need listed at quarterback. It obviously is a need, right? The only quarterback on the roster right now, the projected starter, I'm not even going to lie. I believe it's Geno Smith. I believe he ended up back there, but I could be entirely wrong because it's kind of chaotic. Yes, it's Geno Smith. And then they drafted Kay Klubnik in the 4th round, a draft pick that I do not mind at all. You get him, and he could be a backup for you for the next year. He could compete potentially, or he could be a long-term backup, kind of like a Geno Smith was, a Jacoby Brissett, that tier of guy. Thank you, Jack. 4 wide receivers only have been drafted at pick 2 or higher all time. That's pretty cool. But the Jets at 3, I'm not going to lie, I'm not the biggest Julian Sayin guy, and Ohio State fans can give me crap for that. I'm totally okay with that. But also, I really, really like what the Jets did in this draft class, the pieces they brought in, getting Omar Cooper Jr., getting Kenyon Sadiq, both those guys in the 1st round. The offensive linemen, they've got the bookends in Ahmad Membu. They've got Olufashanu. And so, as much as I'm not a Julian Sayin guy, because he's got so much talent around him at Ohio State, I'm going to go ahead and rip it and say he's got a lot of talent around him in the Jets now. They've done a really good job. They still have Breece Hall at running back. And so that offense looks different and could look very different going forward. So I'm good to go ahead and say Julian Sayin at 3 to the Jets. Jack in the chat said Arch Manning to the Jets. I don't think Arch Manning will go pro this year. I'm going to say it, and I've already heard people say it. They've tried to get ahead of it. I'm not trying to get ahead of it or beat anyone to the punch. I just genuinely believe that Arch Manning will play in college football as long as he can. And it's not because I've got some read on his grandfather. I mean, maybe it's just a gut feeling that he'll be in college for as long as possible. And maybe that gut feeling is due to his grandfather and his dad. And it's due to the fact that he plays for Texas and the amount of NIL they have there. I think that he could, Texas could pay him whatever he would make as a rookie in the NFL. And so I think that he's got another year in him. And yes, Jack, the Aggie fan, so not at all biased whatsoever, said smart because he's not good. He wasn't great last year. He came on a little bit towards the end of the season, but I think he stays because why not stay? Because he's going to get drafted in the first round no matter when he goes. And honestly, if you're him, he clearly has shown with his career decisions, going to Texas even though he knew he would back up Quinn Ewers, that he is willing to do the wise thing. And so would it not be the wise thing to continue to develop and then maybe you get drafted in the top 10 as opposed to number 1? Is that not better off for you? Would you not rather end up on a team picking 10th, right? I mean, teams that picked 10th this last year, I just think that there's a real argument that he would rather not end up on the Jets or the Browns and would rather end up on a team like the Rams, right? If you're a guy like him and you aren't having a great college career and you don't really want to go one, just play out your college career, I just think that he's going to do the wise thing, the mature thing, because his career is being pretty guided, I feel like. Stay in college and then potentially come out and not want to go first overall and not go first overall. At 4, the Raiders. The Raiders spent their draft picks this year on, first overall, Fernando Mendoza. And I actually had this thought earlier this year, or earlier today, and it does sadden me. I'm going to go ahead and say it, not to manifest it. But I wonder if Fernando Mendoza is a Josh Rosen. I wonder if he comes in, and I don't think he will be, because Rosen, his head coach got fired, and so they went in an entirely different direction year one with Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. But I wouldn't be surprised if, due to Fernando Mendoza's lesser physical talent, because he's a really smart quarterback, but he isn't a Lenore Sellers. He's not even necessarily an Arch Manning. He's not a Josh Allen or Lamar Jackson. He doesn't have an arm like Justin Herbert. I just wonder that if we have a bad year one from him, and I'm saying it's a different situation because I don't think the coach will get fired year one, but I wonder if teams will be out on him almost immediately, because if his whole thing is decision-making, maturity in the pocket, if he doesn't exhibit that well in year one, he doesn't have the physical tools like an Anthony Richardson, who Anthony Richardson is going to buy himself another 5 to 10 years in the NFL just because he's so athletically freaky. Mendoza doesn't have that, and so if he doesn't have a good year one, I wonder if he could be the Raiders, the fans, the NFL could be out on him far quicker than other quarterbacks who we've seen drafted that high in the past just because of his lack of physical traits. I'm not saying that's going to happen, and so I'm not going to go quarterback for the Raiders here, especially because I don't think there's any one on the board that I would want to go here. The next quarterback would be Arch Manning in theory, but I already said I don't think he's going to go out. The next quarterback would be Drew Mestemaker out of Oklahoma State, redshirt sophomore this year. And so, no, I'm not going quarterback. That's just a theory I want to put out there. And my mom says she'll draft him for her fantasy team where she only drafts players who love their mothers. Yes, that was growing up. My mom had that fantasy team, and I think Andy Dalton was regularly the quarterback. And I don't remember what story she heard about him that made her love him and his personality so much, but she was a big Andy Dalton fan in that fantasy league. The Raiders, like I said, spent their first-round pick on Fernando Mendoza. They spent last year's first-round pick on Ashton Jeanty. Their weapons are poor, in my opinion. I didn't like them last year. JP thought that Geno Smith would elevate them and do what it took. I disagreed, and here we are. Geno Smith was the most sacked quarterback, I believe, threw a lot of interceptions. The weapons were just not there. Brock Bowers was injured, but it was just not a great year from the Raiders' weapons. And so that's a direction I could go. Other directions, top weapon on the board right now would be like Cam Coleman out of Texas, which I think is a fantastic weapon. And so I honestly, other options would be defense. They tried trading Max Crosby in the offseason to the Ravens, and that fell through due to injury. Would not be surprised to see them go defender. But I think I'm going to try and go offensive line if I can make that work. They bring in Tyler Linderbaum in the offseason. And that was a big piece. Tyler Linderbaum has been a fantastic center for the Ravens. They bring him in the offseason. They bring in Spencer Burford from San Francisco. But a tackle here, I think, could be good. Is there a good tackle? Carter Smith out of Indiana could be the move. Was a starter last year. 2 sacks allowed in 16 games played. Over 1,000 offensive snaps. I'll go ahead and do that. Quick, reunite teammates. That's a really cool story. You get to reunite Indiana quarterback Fernando Mendoza with his college tackle and national champion Carter Smith and set him up for further success. Like I said, offensive line improves for Ashton Jeanty. That's big. Let's see. I'm going to go check it on chat. She likes Joe Flacco because he drove his grandma's Volkswagen, his grandma's Volvo, to training camp as a rookie. Gooseby from Texas, Seton. Both great options, but I'm just going to go with the top tackle on the PFF big board and college teammate, Carter Smith. At 5, the Cleveland Browns need a quarterback. Or do they? I mean, they've drafted 3 quarterbacks in the last 2 years, including Shedeur Sanders in the 5th round, Dylan Gabriel in the 3rd round, and then just this year, they draft potentially the most talented quarterback out of those 3, or out of these 3, Talon Green in the 6th round. Quarterback is listed as their need on PFF. Those are the only needs listed, is the Jets at quarterback and the Browns at quarterback. So those are, 2 of the biggest needs in the NFL. They loaded up on weapons. They go Casey Concepcion in the 1st round, Denzel Boston in the 2nd round. They still have last year's 3rd round pick, Harold Fannin Jr. They made some big moves in the offseason to shore up offensive line after a lot of contracts came due all at the exact same time. They bring in Spencer Fano with their 2nd first-round pick, and they also signed Elton Jenkins, a Mississippi State legend, from the Packers, and then in the trade, I believe they got Titus Howard in a trade with Houston. On the defensive side of the ball, they've got Myles Garrett, and then that secondary I still like a lot. It's got Denzel Ward. It's still got Grant Delpit. That's a secondary I like a lot. But you're sitting here at 5, and I don't think Drew Mestemaker. I know he has the physical profile. I believe he's a pretty tall, imposing guy. But given that he's 6'3", 211, redshirt sophomore, we've only seen it from 1 year from him. And because he redshirted his freshman year, I believe he was a walk-on at North Texas, redshirts his freshman year, plays yet last year, and is fantastic, but he does it in a G5 conference. Now he transfers to Oklahoma State. He'll be in the Big 12, which the Big 12 is absolutely better than the G5, but it's still just, I feel like, an unknown. It's a question mark about what he's going to look like. And so that leaves us with the top guys on the board, right? Positional value. Colin Simmons is there. Dylan Stewart is there. Edge rushers, both very important. Trevor Gooseby, another tackle. Could they go a tackle and get their 2nd tackle in 2 years? I think that's what I'm going to do. How old is Titus Howard? Titus Howard is 29. I think I'm going to go tackle. But I like what Jack said. I like the Jordan Seaton mention. Mississippi State legend, Jordan Seaton. We were his first visit in the transfer portal. I'm going to go Jordan Seaton for the Cleveland Browns. I will say Colin Simmons is tempting because pairing him with Myles Garrett would be awesome. But I'm going to go and get another tackle. And now you have both tackles. You've got Maui Noah. You've got Seaton. You've got interior offensive lineman that you brought in. That's where I'm going to go. So now you feel like offensive line is set. You've got the weapons set. You've got Casey and Denzel Boston. And now maybe Jerry Jeudy is wide receiver 2, maybe even wide receiver 3. I don't know how much longer he has on the team. I don't know what his contract is off the top of my head. I'm sure it's expensive. And then you next year, 2028, bookmark it, Cleveland Browns get their quarterback. Let's see. I'm going to go check it on chat. Deborah Oakley, technically it was a team of all nice guys with no felony convictions who help little old ladies cross the street and love their mothers. Yeah, so she didn't necessarily want just players that love their mothers, because there are a lot of players that love their mothers, but she wanted non-felons was her goal. She also said she's feeling old. She watches a lot of college football and don't recognize most of these guys. I think you will. Because most of these guys were underclassmen last year, is why you wouldn't know their names if you weren't dialed into college football. I mean, some of these players were elite, but also some of these guys were underclassmen last year, and so a lot of the conversation around all college football prospects has to do with the NFL draft. And if they're not going to get drafted that year, there's going to be less conversation about them. So that's probably why you heard less about them last year. At 6, the Tennessee Titans. The Tennessee Titans this year reached big time, taking Carnell Tate 4th overall, I believe. Yeah, 4th overall. Our Titans fan called in about that and was not happy. He was quite devastated. They took Carnell Tate in the first round and then traded back in and took Keldrick Falk in the first round. Pair him on that defensive line with Jeffrey Simmons, with Jermaine Johnson from the Jets. You get Anthony Hill in the second round out of Texas to play linebacker. A lot of new starters in that secondary, a lot of new players, which is kind of to be expected. A lot of players reunited. Some San Francisco players, I believe. San Francisco, Jordan Elliott, a Giant, and Cordell Flott. It kind of felt like the Wan'Dale Robinson from the Giants, Austin Schlottman from the Giants, Daniel Bellinger from the Giants. It felt like Robert Saleh and Brian Daboll. Brian Daboll are trying to make an all-star team out of two bad teams. They were both the head coaches at the Jets and the Giants, respectively. And so they're trying to make an all-star team out of two bad teams. And we'll see how that goes. I don't know what an all-star team and two bad teams looks like. It could just be bad. Or maybe it's a average to slightly above average NFL team, in which case that's a great year one from them. But those are the moves they made in the offseason. They've got their quarterback. They have Cam Ward. What they do not have... Man, what do they not have? Peter Skoronski, former first-rounder, offensive tackle. Drafted, I believe he was a tackle in college, listed at guard. They've got Dan Moore Jr., who they brought from Pitt. J.C. Latham, a former first-rounder 2 years ago. I believe out of Alabama, but I'm not positive. I wouldn't hate if they went wide receiver again. I think that's what I'm going to do. I think I'm going to have them go wide receiver again, except this time I don't think it's going to be a reach. I actually think that it's going to be great positional value. I'm going to have them go Cam Coleman out of Texas. Cam Coleman is, I think, and if he wasn't in the same class as Jeremiah Smith, if he wasn't in the same high school class, we would be talking about this guy a lot more. But he was really good at Auburn, his sophomore year especially, and that was with bad quarterback play, bad offensive coordinatorship, bad head coaching. Everything about that situation for him was bad, and he kind of shone in spite of that. And so I think if he was not sharing the spotlight, or if he was not drowned out by the spotlight that is Jeremiah Smith, we'd be talking about this guy a lot more. And I know Jack hates that because as a Texas player, he does not want to have to hear this guy talked about a lot. But I think that's where we're going to find ourselves. I think he's going to be in a lot of primetime games, maybe even more than Jeremiah Smith, because Ohio State is not going to play as many high-level matchups due to the Big Ten. They're going to play teams like Northwestern. They're going to play teams like Rutgers, whereas Texas is going to play, I don't know their schedules. Maybe Ohio State has a star-studded schedule. I doubt it. They'll play each other. They'll play Ohio State versus Texas, which that will be a really fun matchup. I assume, I say that. Of course, I'm going to look stupid, and that's not. I assume they're playing a home and home, and they played last year to start the season. I haven't confirmed that they're playing, but I'm going to say that they're going to play each other this year, which should be a really fun matchup. On Cam Coleman, Jack asked, would Cam have been the first wide receiver off the board this year? I think 100% yes. I think even if I think Cam Coleman right now, not even junior year Cam Coleman, would have been the first guy off the board this year. So I just think the wide receiver room this year was very poor compared to previous seasons. And so, yeah, I think he would have been wide receiver 1 this year were sophomores allowed to come out. I think he would have been wide receiver 1. But he said it's all good because A&M passed him in the portal. Yeah, y'all processed him. Y'all had him in and said, this is not a culture fit for A&M. Y'all are building something special over there. And he doesn't fit the culture. Y'all don't want guys. I mean, everyone that doesn't commit to your school in the portal is chasing a bag. We all know this. If someone doesn't commit to your school, well, they're chasing a bag. But if they commit to your school, then they're a culture fit. And they trust your coach. They're committing because they see something special there in that culture. Everybody knows this. It's pretty easy. Pretty easy as fans to kind of determine that, from 0 connections and 0 interactions. They play week 2. Awesome. That's going to be a great matchup. I mean, they're not on the field against each other, but there will be. If right now Jeremiah Smith is the consensus wide receiver 1, if Cam Coleman has a great game, Texas fans will be screaming and saying that Cam Coleman, the guy that they developed and created, he'll have been there for 6 months. The guy that they created, the beast, should be wide receiver 1 in this class. At 7, the Carolina Panthers. No, Jack, Panthers will not be going quarterback at 7. They picked up Bryce Young's 5th-year option, so this is year 4 for him. He's about to start, and then next year, I say that, hold on, let me think. Drafted in, 23, 24, 25. This will be year 4, 26. They've already picked up his 5th-year option, so he's got 2 more years left. They've got weapons for him. They've got Tetairoa McMillan, or I guess they've got weapon for him. They have one of the best running backs in the NFL, according to Panthers fans, and Chuba Hubbard. We should not sleep on Chuba Hubbard whatsoever. And then on the defense, I'm trying to kind of look where all their picks are. Monroe Freeling, a tackle. He will likely start, I believe. I think it'll be him and maybe Taylor Moton will be the starting tackles because Ikem Ekwonu will be out, I believe, this season. He's listed as injured, and I believe that was one of the reasons tackle was a move for them, was because they're going to be missing a tackle, at least for a part of this season. But with the board the way it is, I really think I'm going to go best player on the board and also one of the most important positions in the NFL, Colin Simmons. So Colin Simmons, another guy who, if he was draft eligible, there's an argument that he might have been Edge 1 this year, another fantastic athlete, has been really good at Texas, but the Panthers kind of moved on from their best edge rusher. He's at the Giants now. See, if for those of you who are new to the show, I sometimes forget names, and this is where Jack and JP come in super, super clutch and help me remember the names that I've forgotten. Brian Burns. I did it. I don't need y'all. I just remembered myself. I'm really bad with names. But Brian Burns, they moved on from in the past couple of years. Unfortunately for them, a really funny story about him, it was rumored they got offered 2 firsts for Brian Burns from the Rams 3 years ago. They chose to keep him because they thought he was going to be part of the next team of the rebuild. And that didn't happen. And so they ended up trading him for I think ended up being 1 second maybe. It was a lot less. They ended up kind of cooking themselves because they didn't recognize in the moment that it was time to move on and that he was not going to be a part of the next team and of the next, hopefully, championship window. So, yeah. At 7, I think I'm going to go Colin Simmons to kind of be the pass rusher, right? You pair him with Derek Brown. You brought in Jalen Phillips, who had a good year or 2 in Miami, gets traded to Philadelphia. Philadelphia traded for him at the deadline, kind of hoping that he could be the spark, the juice to that team to get them over, not the hump because they just won it the year before, but to be a part of that team and to kind of replace some of the pieces they lost in the last offseason. And he ends up not being that guy for them. He ends up not making the big moves that they needed, and so walked in free agency and ends up with the Panthers. But I think you get Colin Simmons, and all of a sudden that defensive line is elite, right? He's playing with Derek Brown, who we do recognize as a top 10 player at his position. That's something that Panther fans kind of got mad at us about, but that's an elite guy, and so that's an elite defensive line. Colin Simmons out of Texas to the Panthers at 7. At 8, the New York Giants. New York Giants drafted this year a couple guys. They get Arvell Reese at 5, and then they got Francis Maui-Noa at 10. They were one of my favorite drafts this year. The moves they made were pretty good. Getting Maui Noah at 10 after people thought he could have gone early. I think people had potentially him going to the Cardinals at 3 and then getting Arvell Reese at 5 after he kind of not slid. But if you had him as edge 1, I would say he kind of slid because you really thought he was going to end up going to the Jets at 2. And so to get a guy that some people thought was the best edge rusher in the class and should have gone 2nd overall at 5, a mini slide, we'll call it. But here for the Giants, they have their quarterback. They've got Jackson Dart. They've got their running backs. They've got their weapons. They've got Malik Neighbors. They've got Darius Slayton. They've got Darnell Mooney, who they brought in from Atlanta. They also drafted Malachi Fields out of Notre Dame in the 3rd round, somebody who I saw one person mock draft him in the 1st round, and I only saw it do it. He only did it in one of his mock drafts. It was Sam Monson from Check the Mic, who I love, but he did it. I think he had him as like a super dark horse, ends up going in the 3rd round. And so anytime you can get a super dark horse 1st rounder in the 3rd round, that's got to be great value. So Dart's got his weapons now. He's got Andrew Thomas. He's got Jermaine Illuminor, who they brought back. And now you add Francis Maui Noah to that offensive line. I think defense is the move here because I think that offense, you have to say, is not the biggest need. Instead, you look at defense and say, I think Paulson Adebo may be the guy that they're trying to upgrade because Leonard Moore is sitting there as a quarterback from Notre Dame, and we saw this guy play this year. He was a part of the championship run 2 years ago. He was a sophomore. I think he's a sophomore. I believe he's going into his junior year and his first draft eligible year. Yeah, he's still young. He is still young. And so I think that's where the direction I'm going to go is looking for upgrades in the secondary after you bring in Greg Newsome. I mean, you could be looking to upgrade either of those guys. You draft Colton Hood in the 2nd round out of Tennessee, which I think was another great pick because at times I saw him drafted in the 1st round. I think this is a really good move. And so now the defensive line has got Brian Burns. It's got Arvell Reese. You still have Abdul Carter, your last year 1st rounder. Yeah, Jack pointing out in the chat, Leonard Moore is special. I don't know, Jack, if he cooked y'all. I mean, I know y'all won the game, so I know y'all beat Notre Dame in week 3. But I don't know if he was a shutdown corner against y'all. I don't know if y'all kind of have fear and trembling as A&M fans when you think about him. You won, so you wouldn't really necessarily. But I don't know what his performance was against y'all. But the amount of talk I heard about this guy as a freshman and then last year just as a sophomore, clearly special. Expect another great season from him. And so I think adding him to that Giants defense that already has some really, really super talented defensive linemen, like I said, Arvell Reese, Abdul Carter, and then Brian Burns. It sucks that they had to move on from Dexter Lawrence. It really does suck. But I think adding him to that defense could be really, really good. At 9, the Atlanta Falcons. Man, the Falcons are going to Falcon. Yes. Moore was out when he played A&M. That's tough. So he might have been the reason. If he might have played, they might have won that game. Maybe that's how impactful he was. He's probably worth 2 points, which I think is how much y'all beat them by. I think it was a close game. Falcons are going to Falcon. They pick at 9. They expect, I believe, to get their edge rusher back, James Pierce Jr., the guy they traded back up into the 1st round to get in 2025 at the time. People questioned it, thought it might have been a mistake. They drafted, in the same year, they drafted Jalen Walker in the 1st round and then James Pierce Jr. And here we are with them picking 9 and Dylan Stewart sitting on the board. I don't think that's the direction they go. I think that they've invested enough on that defensive line. Michael Penix is their quarterback. This is still too early. I guess Tua. Okay, let's lock in here. So Tua, they brought in free agency. He could be the quarterback this year. Michael Penix, hurt. ACL sprain, not torn, or not a complete tear. So I don't know what his timetable to return will be. Wide receivers, Drake London, who I think they extended or are due to extend, drafted in 2022, so 22, 23, 24, 25. Yeah, He should be getting an extension soon if he's not already got one, if he is their guy and they believe in him. A new head coach in Kevin Stefanski, who comes in from the Cleveland Browns. At tight end, they have Kyle Pitts. Expect a breakout year from Kyle Pitts. He's always about to break out. You got to remember that. That offensive line is good. Running back is fantastic. They've got the two B. Robinsons, Bijan and Brian. I think they go secondary a little bit in the draft. They get Avion Terrell, younger brother of A.J. Terrell. It's really cool that they both played at Clemson. That's a really cool story. I can't wait to hear that talked about. But with their first-round pick, which they didn't have because they traded up to get James Pierce last year. So their first pick this year was second-rounder Avion Terrell. So they invested in the secondary. They've got Xavier Watts. They've got Jesse Bates. They've got A.J. Terrell. They've got Avion Terrell. They've got Mike Hughes. Is there a... All right. And then on offense, they don't really have quarterback, but they also do because Tua might have a good season. He could have a Sam Darnold bounce back year. I'm not saying he will, but that's always in the cards. He's still not. He was only drafted in 2020. He was drafted in 2020, the same year as Joe Burrow. And so while it would be absurd to say that, we just saw Sam Darnold, who was drafted in 2018, have a breakout last year, just 7 years after. And so in theory, Tua, if he can stay healthy, which that's a huge if, it's an absolutely massive if, could be due to break out either this year or next year. And so I don't think quarterback is the direction they go. Michael Penix could come back from his injury and be fantastic. They still have, I think, too many pieces in that quarterback room to say that Drew Mestemaker is the direction they go. They've got weapons. Their offensive line is decent. Their running backs are great. And so I'm actually going to pull the trigger and say they go edge rusher with their third first-round pick edge rusher in 3 years. That being two years ago, and then one this year. I'm going to scratch that. No. You know what? We're going to say that they've got their edge rushers, and we're going to go interior defensive line. David Stone from Oklahoma is a part of a fantastic defense from Oklahoma last year. Fantastic defense 2 years ago, and then also really good this year. The big issue with that Oklahoma team is the offense. They couldn't run the ball, inconsistencies there, but he's a great player out of Oklahoma. And so we're going to go David Stone to put in between the bookends of James Pierce Jr. and Jalen Walker, not Watson. Jalen Walker. I'm going to check in on chat because I saw someone ask a question. Is this order based on all the trades we saw made this year? No. So this draft order is based on, I guess, Vegas predictions on where teams will finish. And so the team that's predicted to have the best record and win the Super Bowl picks last. The team that's predicted to win the fewest games picks first. That's how projections always are. I don't necessarily know if it's always Vegas-based, but it's the similar model to determine expected wins, and that's how you sort all your mock drafts. Even, every week of the season until you actually know the final record is all projected. Hip Hams, Anthony Richardson is your 2028 Super Bowl MVP. Yes, I mean, he would be due. Drafted in 2021, he would be, right? He was 2022, I believe, because I think it was 2022, but I could be wrong. 2021 was Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. 2022 was... Oh, actually, I think I'm getting mixed up. I'm going to stop talking because I think I got it wrong. And I think I botched it. You know what? Let's go double check it. Let's go instead of guessing because the memory cannot remember everything. 2020 was Tua. I was right there. 21 was Trevor Lawrence and Zach Wilson. Was right there. And then 2023 was C.J. Stroud, Bryce Young, Anthony Richardson. So no, technically, if the theory is 7 years, because that's how long it took Darnold, 2018 to 2025, then we're looking at Anthony Richardson breakout season in 2030. And I don't know if you can get odds on an Anthony Richardson Super Bowl win in 2030 or 2031, but that's what we're looking at. Jack said, I doubt they go quarterback, but Tua's injuries make me really doubt a resurgence is coming for him. Yeah, that's absolutely fair. And like I said, that's why there's a huge asterisk next to when I said that, he could break out. It's entirely dependent on his ability to stay healthy and also his ability to play well, to not get spooked, to be able to stand in the pockets and trust that offensive line. So there's about, 15 to 20 ifs that have to happen in order for him to have a good year. But it's possible. And it's such a different situation from Darnold because Darnold was situation-based and kind of wrong place, wrong time, came out of college too early. A lot of people said he should have gone back for one more year, ended up on the Jets, who were that's a quarterback career wrecker. And so Tua's are injury-related, taking hits behind that offensive line, some of them flukes. But at what point do the flukes start to become like consistent concerns? But yeah, I completely agree that it's unlikely he breaks out. But I just don't see them going quarterback because they still have Michael Penix, who, when he comes back, will be competing to prove that he's the guy. It's a weird quarterback room, and so that's why I don't have them going first. That's why I have them not going quarterback in the first round. At 10, the New Orleans Saints. In honor of JP, tempted to go tackle, especially with Trevor Goosby sitting there from Texas, because they went tackle last year in 2025, and he hated it in the moment. We have a great TikTok of him mourning his team's decision to go tackle in the first round, and he was quite upset about it. I think since then he's kind of come around, especially they went Tyler Shuck in the second round. But yeah, they go Kelvin Banks Jr. out of Texas, and it'd be just funny to pair him with Trevor Goosby. I think JP would lose it, which would be really funny. But also, I'm as a Chargers fan, like I can't make fun because then he'll make fun back. But also, it's part of what we do. But seeing Trevor Goosby there, I would love to see JP's reaction if they just win another tackle for no reason whatsoever, even though they've got 2 first-rounders in Talisi Fuaga and Kelvin Banks. They go wide receiver, Jordan Tyson, with the 8th overall pick, I believe. I believe they picked right after the Commanders at 7. They've got Jordan Tyson. They've got Chris Olave. They've got Tyler Shuck, whether or not you believe in him. They've got Travis Etienne, as it's now said. They've got Alvin Kamara. They just signed Travis Etienne to I believe, a 4-year deal at running back. So I think running back's good. And so let's look at the defense. They've got 2023 first-rounder Brian Brzee there. He's out of Clemson. They've got Pete Werner, second-rounder from 2022. But Chase Young is still there. Secondary, they've got Justin Reed. They've got Kool-Aid McKinstry. I think defense is the direction we go here. And I think that if you're the Saints, you got a couple options. You don't have like a star edge rusher. You got Chase Young, who's not a star. He's a former star, right? Super talented at Ohio State, drafted 2nd overall in 2020, maybe 2020, because I believe he was drafted 2nd overall the year after Nick Bosa was, and I think Nick Bosa was 2019. Let's go see if it was 2020. It was 2nd overall 2020. Bang. Yeah, so you've got Chase Young there, but he's just has not been worth the 2nd overall pick by any means whatsoever. And so I don't know that it would be an awful idea to go take another shot on a star edge rusher. You've got Kool-Aid McKinstry. Yeah. I wish JP was here because I really don't want to make a bad pick here and him, have gripe with it because I just don't know the Saints as well as he does. Not even that. I just want to know what he thinks they should do. Because if I right here sitting here, I'm thinking either Dylan Stewart out of South Carolina at edge, or I'm thinking Ellis Robinson, the 4th cornerback from Georgia, and I just don't really know what he thinks they should do. But I'm gonna go Ellis Robinson. I'm gonna go cornerback and help out that secondary because they still have draft capital invested on the offensive line. They still have Brian Brzee. They still have Chase Young. And I think Chase Young may have had a good year last year. I wasn't dialed into Saints games as much as maybe I should have been, but that's the direction I'm going to go. And now we got the Commanders. Hopefully Jack chimes in for this. The Commanders this year went with their pick. I think Sonny Styles, is that where they went? Please tell me I'm right. They did. Sonny Styles, 7th overall. They brought in a lot of new pieces in that defense. I'm just going to read a few of them off. They brought in Odafe Owe from the Chargers, who had a great second half of the season. They brought in Leo Chenal from Kansas City. They brought in K'Lavon Chaisson from New England. They brought in Nick Cross from Indianapolis. They brought in Amik Robertson from Detroit. They brought in, that's the defensive pieces they brought in. It's a lot of new faces there, and Chad is screaming in the chat, give him Dylan Stewart. And so I think that's what we're going to do. Dylan Stewart, I wonder if Dylan Stewart could have a 20, so I'm going to pose that we could see him do what last year's Clemson Tigers roster did, where the team is really bad and that forces them to slide down big boards. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe South Carolina has a good year, or maybe I'm wrong and he surpasses, he overcomes the team issues and has a good year in spite of that and still gets drafted 11th, potentially even top 10. But we're going to give Jack the guy that he wants in Dylan Stewart and add him to that defensive line. And, I mean, that is an immediate win for the Commanders after some tough years at edge rusher. I mean, they're the ones that drafted Chase Young. That didn't work out. They had Preston Smith, who was not a first-round pick, but he was good for a while. They just have not. They bring in Von Miller. That did not work. I believe he was there last year. That did not work to great success. And he said in the chat on Dylan Stewart, he needs to be more productive or the age-old debate will start. That was nice and vague. I'm not exactly sure what he means by age-old debate about maybe talent or what I said about being on a bad team, being what drags him down. Maybe that's the age-old debate. Maybe the age-old debate is on whether or not water is wet or the glass is half empty. I'm not really sure which age-old debate he's talking about. There's a lot of them out there. But at 12, we got the New York Jets with their second pick. This is the one they got from the Colts. Actually, it's the second of the 2 draft picks that they got from the Colts in the Sauce Gardner pick, the Sauce Gardner trade. Traits versus production. That's the age-old debate. Okay. But yeah, with, like I said, I already forget. I'm going to have to scroll up and see who I had them go with their first pick. Julian Sayans. So they've got their quarterback of the future, which is awesome. Jets fans are rejoicing in the street. They are weeping for joy that they have the quarterback, the guy of the future. Like I said, they've already got the tackles. And so I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to... Oh, this is actually a really cool story. Here we go. We're about to reunite college teammates for the second time. We're going to pair former edge rusher from Texas Tech, David Bailey, with current Texas Tech interior defensive lineman, A.J. Holmes Jr. I say that. I really hope he's not a transfer. I hope he actually was there last year, because then it would not, and it doesn't say either. Oh yeah, he did. Okay, so he was teammates last year with David Bailey. I think that's the direction we're going to go. They traded away Quinnen Williams to the Cowboys last season. Their middle and secondary looks like this. Demario Davis returns, 2012 draft pick Demario Davis from the Saints. Joseph Asai brought in from Cincinnati. Nashawn Wright brought in from Chicago. Minka Fitzpatrick traded from Miami. They draft D'Angelo Pons in the second round. And so a lot of new faces in that linebacker and secondary. They traded for Devondre Sweat from Tennessee. But I'm going to have them go A.J. Holmes and reunite him with his team. Yeah, I'm going to have them reunite him with his teammate, David Bailey. Because I just don't... I'm not going Ryan Williams. I'm a Ryan Williams hater, and it's not just because I don't like Alabama. There's actual evidence. Actually, hold up. You know what? I'm sorry. I just scrolled down and I saw it. No, I can't do that to him. That's that. I thought about having them go Kelly Jones only because with Sauce Gardner gone, I don't know that they have a true beast at cornerback. I don't think that Brandon Stevens or Nashawn Wright are beasts. But because I'm a State guy, I'm not going to curse Kelly Jones to have a disappointing career. Instead, I'm probably going to intentionally mock him somewhere where I think he can be successful. But it's my mock draft, and I'm a State fan, so I'm allowed to do that. If you have a problem with it, then you can stop watching. That'd be really sad. I hope you don't. I hope you understand that I'm a fan. But I'm going to probably mock draft Kelly Jones somewhere where he can be successful. I should have had him go to the Commanders. That would have been so funny. After they win Emmanuel Forbes in 2023, I believe. Jack still talks about how sad he is they did that instead of drafting Christian Gonzalez. But I think I'm going to have the Jets go DJ Holmes because I don't want Emmanuel Forbes to have a disappointing career, which he will because everyone who gets drafted by the Jets really, really does, unfortunately. At 13, the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh Steelers went offensive lineman, I believe. Offensive, let me go double check. Oh, Jack said that he would have taken not Emmanuel Forbes. He would have taken Kelly Jones at 11 gladly. That's cool. I'm glad to see that you are not out on Mississippi State cornerbacks because of your one bad experience, It's also going to be really funny if he ends up putting a little bit of weight and becomes good, and y'all should just hold on to him and developed him. Y'all sold. We'll see, though. At 13, the Pittsburgh Steelers, they spent their first-round pick on Max Ahinachor out of Arizona State, an offensive tackle. I believe Broderick Jones is injured, and so there's a chance that Ahinachor starts. Across from Troy Fautanu, the 2024 first-round pick. Their second-round pick was Jeremy Bernard, a wide receiver. So I actually really like this wide receiver room, and I'm going to go on a slight tangent and compare it to the Green Bay wide receiver room. I think that every wide receiver in the Steelers wide receiver room is a wide receiver 2. But I think that every Steelers I think they're all wide receiver 2As. I think they're all a lot closer to being wide. I think that Michael Pittman and DK Metcalf are both closer to being wide receiver 1s than those Packers wide receivers last year in that wide receiver room that I hated because there was no high-end guy. I think that the ceiling of this team, this wide receiver room, is higher than the ceiling of the Packer wide receiver room from last year. And maybe that's a little bit hypocritical of me. Maybe it's not a fair comparison, but I do like the looks, the first glance at this wide receiver room for 2026 with Michael Pittman, with the massive size, and DK Metcalf. And then you get Jeremy Bernard in there. I like that a lot. And I think that sets up for them to, you know what? I think we're going to go quarterback. I think we're going to glance down the list, and I'm going to find my guy. I don't know if it's going to be Mestemaker, but I think that might be the direction they go. They still have TJ Watt on the defense. They got 2025 first-round pick Derek Harmon, one of Jack's favorite players. They've got Joey Porter Jr. still there. They've got Jalen Ramsey, who they acquired in the trade from Miami. They've got Jamel Dean, who they signed from Tampa Bay. He's very good. They've got Quan Brisker, who they signed from Chicago. They still have Alex Highsmith. They've got Patrick Queen, who they brought in, who came up from Baltimore a little while ago. I think that I'm actually going to get really fun with this Steelers pick and say, you know what? They're picking in the top 13 right now, according to PFF, mock draft, PFF simulator. And so that means that they probably finished below 500, which would be, even last year, I don't think they technically, I can't actually remember. I'm pretty sure they finished 9-8 last year. So let's go quarterback. I'm going to read off some of the names on the PFF big board. Arch Manning, but I already said I don't think he's coming out. Drew Mestemaker, who is young. He just started as a redshirt freshman. He will be a redshirt sophomore this year. It will be his first year in Power 4 play after spending last year at North Texas. CJ Carr, quarterback for Notre Dame. Last year, he was a redshirt freshman or sophomore. I'm not positive which, but it was his first year starting. Brendan Sorsby, but Brendan Sorsby is now potentially just I don't know what's going to happen with him with his betting issues and what kind of punishment he will suffer. Sam Levitt, quarterback at LSU. Darian Mensah, quarterback at Miami. Levitt is a former transfer from Michigan State to Arizona State, was very good for them 2 years ago in the 2024-2025 season, led them to a playoff berth, a Big 12 championship, returned for his third year, and got injured, and Jordan Tyson was injured, and it just wasn't the same. Cam Scadaboo was no longer there. It just was not the same for Sam Levitt. He ends up missing a lot of the season with injury, transfers to LSU. Darian Mensah, I believe was a red shirt something at at Duke. And he is now at Miami. So what quarterback would I go here? There's not a lot of options because they haven't ranked a whole lot of players, which is totally understandable. The draft was a week ago. But I'm not going to lie, I don't want to go Mestamaker. A little unproven for me. Obviously not Sorsby. And then I'm not a Levitt fan. I watched Levitt play here in person at State. I'm just I think he's a little overhyped. I think he's a little oversold. And having seen him in person, I'm good there. And so I think I'm going to go Darian Mensah at 13 to the Steelers. The funny thing is that PFF does average draft position, so they have their big board rank, and the way I listed the guys was in order of their rankings. But then they also have average draft position, which I'm sure looks at every mock draft that's done and then averages out where those guys are drafted. Darian Mensah, out of the guys that I listed, is the highest drafted on average. He is drafted on average 13.8. And so I'm going to continue to drag that number down closer to 13 and go Darian Mensah, quarterback out of Miami, the new quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Redshirt junior, so he's a redshirt sophomore last year, which would be the second Miami quarterback in the last 3 years drafted in the top 13 after Cam Ward went first overall last year to the Titans. At pick 14, the Minnesota Vikings. The Minnesota Vikings drafted... Who did they draft? I think they went the Florida interior defensive lineman, not McDonald, the other one. Katie McDonald was the Ohio State one. They went Caleb Banks. Yes, the Florida interior defensive lineman. No, not a lot of new faces. Actually, before I get to the rest of this the rest of this Minnesota pick, I'm going to take a quick look at the chat. Jack said it wasn't a bad State corner experience. It was a bad Forbes experience. That's fair. It was a really unfortunate Forbes experience for y'all. I'm also going to grab a quick sip of water because my throat is very dry. We're back. All right. The Minnesota Vikings are on the clock at pick 14. They drafted Caleb Banks with their first-round pick in 2026. It's one of the few new faces on that defense. And they're going to be an interesting team. I really think that they're going to go as far as Kyler Murray or J.J. McCarthy can take them, which is really sad because that defense is fantastic. It is led by Brian Flores, who's a guy who I have loved since his time at Miami. I know that there were off the field ish. I can't remember the details of why he ended up leaving Miami or getting fired, but all I remember, my favorite Brian Flores moment was they were trading away every piece they had. They were trading away Laramie Tunsil. They traded away potentially Minka. I can't remember all the pieces they traded away. They traded away a lot of pieces, and he continued to win games. Not a lot of games. I think they won 6 to 8 games that year, but I was just very impressed with his ability to carry a roster that was being emptied of anything worth a fourth-round pick or better. He continued to win games with that roster. That was very impressive to me. And so he's a guy that I like a lot as a defensive coordinator now. But But this team is going to go as far as Kyler Murray or J.J. McCarthy, 9, as we say. We'll take them. And this, there's an argument that we should expect a Sam Darnold breakout or not a Kirk Cousins breakout, but I will say that Kevin O'Connell has consistently shown his ability to get the best out of guys. And so maybe we continue to see that this year. Maybe he gets the best out of Kyler Murray, which I think would be not surprising, but a little surprising for most or all of us. And so we're going to look at not quarterback. Tight end, they've got TJ Hawkinson. Running back, they've got Aaron Jones. Some of the best players still on the board. We've got a safety from Georgia. We've got an edge, younger brother of DJ Uiagalelei. I am going to have them go. This is where I'm going to have Kelly Jones go. I'm not sure if cornerback is the Vikings' biggest need. I feel like they have a really good roster outside of quarterback. They are not nearly as good a roster as the Rams, but I just feel like they have a really solid roster across the board outside of quarterback, and I'm not going to fix quarterback with one swing here. And so I'm going to have them go Kelly Jones, and the majority of the reason I'm doing that is as a State fan, I want him to go somewhere he'll succeed. And do I think he could succeed in this Vikings organization, in this Vikings defense. He may not get like the highlight reel. He may not be the high-profile player of Jalen Ramsey because he's kind of a wheel and a cog of that Brian Flores defense that I was just talking about. But he's a cog in a wheel, not a wheel in a cog. He's a cog in a wheel of that Brian Flores defense, and that wheel is going to turn smooth, and it's going to play really well, and it's going to force turnovers, and it's going to confuse quarterbacks. I mean, the movement on that line is going to leave Kelly Jones with some of the easiest interceptions of his career, potentially, with forcing quarterbacks to make really, really hard decisions. And so I'm going to go Kelly Jones to the Vikings at 14, and I think he's going to have a great, great career there. I think any defender will have a great career for Minnesota. At 15, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They went. Actually, where did they go? I'm trying to remember. I'm not the later picks. I was dialed in, and I was dialed in for the rest, but it's harder to remember. Ruben Bain, of course. Ruben Bain at 15 because he slides all the way down to 15, and that was a huge slide for them. If I had not just taken Kelly Jones, probably would have gone Kelly Jones here. They had to let their cornerback walk, and he ends up signing with Pittsburgh, which is really tough. On offense, they still got Emeka Egbuka, last year's first rounder. They still have Chris Godwin recovering from yet another injury. I believe he returned last season, but he was injured last year. They've got Jalen McMillan. They still have Tez Johnson. They draft Ted Hurst in the 3rd round out of Georgia State. That's right. He was one of the smaller school guys drafted. Ted Hurst out of Georgia State. I believe a bigger body to kind of complement the smaller bodies they have in Emeka and Chris Godwin and Tez Johnson. They've got Baker Mayfield. They still have Bucky Irving coming back. That offensive line is good. It just needs to stay healthy, which was the huge issue last year with Tristan Wirfs missing time with injury. I believe at one time maybe all of the starters were injured, or at least most of them. It was not great. And so now that offensive line, that offense is dependent on O-line staying healthy and then Baker Mayfield being able to sustain the high-level play we saw from him to start the season. That being said, I think I'm going to go offensive line here. I think that was what dragged them down, what cut short a great season and made it a not great season. They end up picking in the first half, the top half of the draft. And so I wonder, are there any, let me see if I can find any O-linemen. So we got 2 tackles near the top of our board. Trevor Gooseby out of Texas and Caden Green out of Missouri. I would like a guy who can potentially do a little bit of everything. Maybe move to guard if the tackles can stay healthy. Maybe he starts. Yes, okay, Caden Green transition from guard to tackle. I think I'm going to go Caden Green out of Missouri because if your two current tackles can stay healthy, well, then you plug him in at guard and you help out that offensive line when someone, as they always do, because the NFL is a physical sport, gets hurt. If one of your tackles goes down, well, he's playing tackle at Missouri, plug him in at tackle. That's, I think, the direction I'm going to go at 15 overall for the Buccaneers is to shore up that offensive line and give Baker the time he needs in that pocket to get the ball to his weapons. At 16, the Dallas Cowboys. Man, this would... Imagine if I got to take Arch here. Imagine a world... There's that song by, I believe, Paul McCartney called Imagine. And I'm just imagining a world where Arch Manning gets drafted by the Cowboys. And that is a wild world. It would take either a down year by the Cowboys or a midseason trade where they trade away probably CeeDee Lamb, who knows, and they get a high first-round pick. But I just don't see them doing that. I don't see that happening. So it would take like an Arch Manning slide. But just imagine a world where Arch Manning ends up on the Cowboys and sits behind Dak for a couple years. That would just be really funny. It would be it might be the like most, it feels like the NFL is scripted. John Lennon wrote Imagine. I'm sorry, I apologize, not Paul McCartney. John Lennon wrote Imagine. Yeah. I know I can't do that to Dak, Jack. I do agree. But I'm thinking like he comes and rides the bench for a couple years. Dak's like 30. He got drafted in 2016. This is year 10. And so I just think that'd be a wild world, but I've already said Arch is not getting drafted in this draft class. And so instead, the Cowboys, who just signed George Pickens, he signed the franchise tag, so he will be there this year, but potentially no longer after that. To be determined. They've got their quarterback in Dak, and he is older. He's 30, I believe. He was drafted in 2016. He's around 30. 32. He's 32. I forgot he probably played 4 or 5 years in college with a red shirt. So he's 32. Quarterback is not where they go. I don't think. They've got weapons. They've got offensive line. I think defense might be the direction to go yet again in back-to-back years after drafting Caleb Downs in the first round. I really wish Kelly Jones was still here. I'm not going to lie. Kelly Jones, I feel like, would be a good pickup here for them. There are no great options at cornerback left on the board. The top one available is Jamari Sharp out of Indiana, all the way down in the 30s. And so this is tough for the Cowboys. Secondary, I imagine, will still be their need. I don't think that bringing in Jalen Thompson and Kobe Durant's going to fix that secondary. They're going to be trotting out Deron Bland and Kobe Durant at cornerback likely. They've got this year's 4th-round pick, Devin Moore. They drafted Malachi Lawrence in the first round, a pick that some people consider a reach out of UCF after trading up potentially to get him or trade. I don't remember exactly the details of around the circumstances in which they drafted him. I am going to have them go. I really wish I knew Malik Hooker when his contract was up. Because if this is the final year of his contract, I would have them go KJ Bolden out of Georgia. Let me see if I can find. He's 30. Yeah, I'm going to actually have them do that. He's 30 years old. And so I'm going to go KJ Bolden out of Georgia to go ahead and continue. I mean, that defense, the secondary should be improved, but one offseason does not take you from from awful to good. It takes you from awful to maybe average. That's probably their hope. And so this is another first-round investment on a secondary piece to try and get from awful where they were last year to good/great in the next year or two. Thank you. Yes, they traded back with the Eagles. That makes a lot of sense why they would trade back, because they probably expected nobody else was going to take him in the first round. And I will say, Jerry Jones has historically been very good in the first round, in my opinion. He's definitely had some misses. Taco Charlton was a miss. But he's had some pretty big hits in the first round as well. At 17, the Chicago Bears. Chicago Bears, I believe, went the safety from Oregon in the first round, Dylan Thieneman, I believe. Double-checking it as we speak. But that's a team that made huge, huge improvements from 2 years ago to this year under first-year head coach Ben Johnson. Yes, they went Dylan Thieneman in the first round last year. Where would they go? I think defensive line could be the move for them. They signed Devin Bush to add to that defense. They signed Kobe Bryant from Seattle to add to that defense. Devin Bush will be a big piece to watch because Devin Bush has not been great, and then last year he plays for Cleveland. He plays in that system, and he looked really good. But he's only looked good for that year. And so does he go to Chicago, and that was his kind of everything clicked for him, and he's a good middle linebacker now? Or does he kind of regress back to what we had seen from him for the first couple years of his career after getting drafted in 2019, I believe, out of Michigan? Let me go double-check that. I just love talking about old drafts. I'm going to go double-check. I believe it was a 2019 draft, and I believe he's the Michigan. Because whatever draft it was, him and Devin White were drafted in the exact same year. And so the question is, did I get the year right, and did I get which Devin it was correct? 2019, Devin White, yep, out of LSU. Devin Bush out of Michigan. Yep, nailed it. Both of them top 10. Wow. So they bring in Devin Bush to play in that defense, but I think defensive line is where I'm going to go because that offensive line improved from 2 years ago when it was historically bad and Caleb Williams was running around like crazy. They bring back some pieces there, and then they add Garrett Bradbury from New England in a trade. They drafted another interior offensive lineman in the second round. And then at weapons, they still have Roma Dunze. They still have Luther Burden, a former second-round pick. So they're invested there. They've got Colston Loveland. So they've got 3 first- and second-round picks as weapons for Caleb Williams. They still have DeAndre Swift. They still got Kyle Monangai, who was a 7th-round pick, albeit in a very deep running back class last year. So I think defense is where they go because I think defense is maybe where they're missing some star power. You're looking at Grady Jarrett as an interior defensive lineman. He's 33 years old. You are looking at Montez Sweat, who is a Mississippi State legend, and I love him, but I don't think he is the star power. He's not a Khalil Mack. He's not or a prime Khalil Mack. He's not a Max Crosby or Myles Garrett. And so you would love to be able to add a piece across from him, and then all of a sudden that becomes potentially the best edge rushing duo in the NFL, just because I do think Montez Sweat is a very, very high-end edge 1, but I don't think he's a very high-end edge 2, but I do not think he's a low-end edge 1, in my opinion. And so looking at this, I think Mateo Uyunglele out of Oregon had 9 sacks 2 years ago, just 6 sacks this year, but a lot of hurries. He was getting to the quarterback a lot of pressures. And so we're going to go Mateo Uyunglele. You add him to that defensive line, and now you've added pieces in the secondary. You drafted Malik Muhammad out of Texas. Like I said, you added Dylan Thieneman. You added Kobe Bryant from Seattle. All of a sudden, this defense hopefully is as star-studded as that offense is, because that offense is very star-studded. I think that almost every offensive player, you could argue, and maybe it's just because offensive players are higher profile, but they all feel star-studded. I say names. Roma Dunze, probably going to be a star. Luther Burden was a star in college and was projected to be a first-round pick before a down junior season puts him in the second round. Colston Loveland was a first-round pick who had a good rookie season as tight end. Caleb Williams, star. And then you look at running back DeAndre Swift, had a great year at Chicago. Maybe that's just the nature of offense. Maybe that's why it feels like they're all stars. But those are some of the pieces, defense. Some of that same high-profile talent. Some of those same guys. At 18, the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars did not have a first-round pick, I believe, because of their trade with the Browns last year to get Travis Hunter. And so instead, they are the team that many people think reached on an A&M legend, Nate Borkicher, and then proceeded to take a second tight end in the draft in the 5th round and Tanner Koziol. And so they drafted Nate Borkicher out of A&M at tight end, Emmanuel Pregnon, a guard from Oregon, in the 2nd and 3rd round. They spent a 3rd-round pick on Jalen Husky, a free safety, Albert Regis, a interior defensive lineman in the 3rd round, Wesley Williams, a defensive lineman in the 4th round. So they didn't pick up a lot of stars in this draft, especially using their second pick on a guy, or their first pick in the 2nd round, on a guy that not a lot of people had going that high. And so I think that next year they may end up needing to make some moves. And I think the move I'm going to have them make, there's a couple options here. Wide receiver or running back are kind of where I'm landing. I look at that defense, and I like a lot of pieces they have here. I love Josh Allen. I think Travon Walker was unfortunately the second best, or at least not the best edge rusher in that class. It's really unfortunate for the Jaguars. They took him over Aiden Hutchinson. In the secondary, I am really excited to see Travis Hunter play full-time secondary. That's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to see that. And so I'm going to look, especially with the way this board has fallen, and I don't like it because I don't like Alabama, and I don't like Ryan Williams, but I'm tempted to go Ryan Williams here. Other wide receiver is just tempting for me. You got Brian Thomas Jr. there. You've got Jacoby Myers, and you've got Parker Washington. Parker Washington, a 6th-round pick, 6th-round legend. And so wide receiver is tempting for me, but also offensive line. I cannot remember the status of their offensive line. They've got a 1st-round pick, Anton Harrison. I just don't know off the top of my head how good that offensive line was last year. I know that they won a lot of games, and so I kind of have a feeling that it was a decent offensive line, which is why I'm going to stick to my guns and go wide receiver. Because Travis Hunter is not going to play full-time both sides, as most people kind of expected, even if the Jaguars tried to make it seem like he would, or even play most time on both sides of the ball. I'm going to go wide receiver here. Let's take a look. KJ Duff is a highly ranked player, 6'6", 225 pounds, an absolute monster. My goodness. That is large, and I don't know if I want that big of a wide receiver. That's a scary size. Having not watched a lot of him play, I think I'm more comfortable going Ryan Williams. I do not know at the top of my head if KJ Duff, how he plays in that size. I feel like that'd be a hard size to play in comfortably at wide receiver. It makes me feel like he's going to be like a Kelvin Benjamin, I believe, whoever the wide receiver was for the Panthers in 2015 with Cam Newton, who then tried to make a comeback as a tight end. I do not remember who that was off the top of my head. But I'm going to go Ryan Coleman Williams out of Alabama to the Jacksonville Jaguars. How far he's fallen after the first half of his freshman year, looking like the best wide receiver in the country. Had a little bit of a down year as a sophomore. We will see where he lands after his junior year. At 19, the Houston Texans. Man, what are they going to do? So, a poor offensive line showing last year. A poor C.J. Stroud showing last year at times. It just, none of that team looks the same as it did. And here we are. They last went Keelan Rutledge in the 1st round in 2026 to try and improve that offensive line. They added Keelan Rutledge to try and improve that offensive line. They bring in Braden Smith and Wyatt Teller in free agency. They signed traded for David Montgomery from Detroit. that defense is so, so good. And we let them get Caden McDonald. We, being every other team in the NFL, let them get Caden McDonald in the second round out of Ohio State, a guy who could have been a first rounder. They added Reed Blankenship. I'm just looking at this defense, and it's terrifying. If I'm an AFC South team, I'm terrified to have to play them twice. You got Derek Stingley. You got Kamari Lassiter. You've got Reed Blankenship. You've got Henry To'o. You've got Sheldon Rankins, Will Anderson Jr. Now they've got Caden McDonald. It is ridiculous, the pieces they have there on that defense. And so I cannot in good conscience draft defense. Instead, I'm going to look at offense and say another offensive lineman, Trevor Gooseby from Texas, is sitting here. PFF has ranked as the 10th best prospect, and you're getting him at 19 at a position that I expect to be a huge need. That is an absolute home run for the Texans. At 20, the Denver Broncos. The Denver Broncos also did not have a first-round pick because they traded it to the Miami Dolphins, and in exchange for Jalen Waddle, which was a big get for them. You pair him with Courtland Sutton, and that's really exciting for year 3 of Bo Nix after a year 2 where he didn't improve as much as you might have expected or hoped. And so they're now picking at 20 with a first-round pick after drafting not even in the second round. They drafted in the third round and took Tyler Onyedum, a defensive lineman. So this is a chance for them to get a high-profile player. That defense was good last year. Maybe not as good as the Texans, but still really, really good. I am going to do something fun here. I'm actually going to go running back. J.K. Dobbins has been very injury-prone his entire career, unfortunately. R.J. Harvey was good, but he's not an elite NFL running back. I think Ahmad Hardy could be an elite NFL running back. And so I'm going to have them get a running back to be what is hopefully the cherry on top. Right now, your offensive line is hopefully good. You've got your quarterback of the future. You've got your weapons, Jalen Waddle and Courtland Sutton, not Jerry Jeudy, a former Bronco. You got that defense. I'm going Ahmad Hardy, a running back to the Denver Broncos. A very low drafted running back. I only say that because the last 2 years we've had one drafted to the Raiders at I think 6 and then to the Cardinals at 3. So 20 feels like, whoa, it's just so far down, so fallen. At 21, the Cincinnati Bengals, they this year they traded their first round pick at 10 overall to the New York Giants in exchange for Dexter Lawrence, a trade that I liked a lot for them. Some people did not because there were rumors that all the Giants were getting offered were second-round picks, and the Bengals overpaid. But you spent your first-round pick on a guy who's going to make a bigger impact than you expect any other pick you could make at 10 overall would do. And so I just fail to see how that's a huge loss. Then in the second round, they turn around and they draft Cassius Howell. In the third round, they draft Takario Davis, so they are just continuing to pour into that defense. You look at offense, and you see that they still have Jamar Chase, they still have T. Higgins, they still have Andre Iosivas. That offense, the weapons look great. I wouldn't have minded a running back, but instead, I think I'm going to look at offensive line because you have to keep Joe Burrow safe. You absolutely must keep Joe Burrow safe. I would love to once again find an offensive lineman who could do both because I have concerns about... I just want to prepare for the worst. You kind of assume that someone will get hurt at some point, but I don't really see anyone like that on the board, and I don't know where the top guard is. Let me sort by guard to see if there's one. Cade Pieper from Iowa is the top listed guard. I'm not going to go. He's outside the top 30, so I'm not going to go there at this time. Instead, what if we get really fun? Demetrius Knight, Carter. Murphy Miles is a first-round pick. Jonathan Allen. How old is Jonathan Allen? Probably older. 31. Let's keep adding the defensive line. Let's keep adding to the defensive line. And go. Actually, let's just add to the defense in general. But we're going to add to the second layer, not the defensive line. We're going to add Notre Dame linebacker, whose name I have never had to say before, so I'm going to try it. Kingston Viliamu Asa. Out of Notre Dame, a linebacker. We're going to say that they added some big pieces to that defensive line. They added Jonathan Allen, Dexter Lawrence, Boye Mafe from Seattle, and then draft Cassius Howell. That's great. That looks really, really good on paper. Then you sign Brian Cook as a free safety. You bring back Jordan Battle and Dax Hill. Hopefully that works out. And now you're adding the centerpiece, the captain, the guy who runs it all. You're adding a linebacker to go there, where you are currently going to start, I think, Barrett Carter, 2025 fourth rounder. So you're going to bring in some competition there in a first rounder, a super talented guy out of that Notre Dame defense who we've already seen one player get drafted. And so we're going to go Kingston Viliamu Asa, linebacker out of Notre Dame. At 22, the New England Patriots. A very, very impressive year from the Patriots, earning the number 2 seed behind the Denver Broncos. Ridiculous that we had 2 second-year quarterbacks as the 1 and 2 seeds in the AFC, and yet that is where we found ourselves. They spent their first-round pick on Caleb Lomu, which is a great move. I love that move from them. I think here, I would not hate to see a fourth first-round wide receiver come off the board. Who that is, or potentially even tight end. So on defense, they still have Milton Williams there. They bring in Draymond Jones. Robert Spillane is still there. Harold Landry is still there. They've got Kevin Byard, who they signed from Chicago. Christian Gonzalez is a fantastic young cornerback. Carlton Davis III is a good cornerback. They bring in Gabe Jacas in the second round. Jacas. I think I'm going to go tight end here because currently your weapons are Kayshon Boutte, Matt Collins, and you're expecting / hoping to add A.J. Brown. You spent a first-round pick on an offensive lineman. You brought in Elijah Vera-Tucker. This looks like a really good team. I would not hate a running back here, but I'm going to get Drake May another weapon because you just spent a second-round pick on Travion Henderson. Very talented. You still have Ramondre Stevenson. If you can figure out some of the small issues you have there, like fumbling problems and stuff like that, that's not a bad running back room. And you want your primary offense to be through your MVP caliber quarterback in Drake May. Get him a tight end, and now all of a sudden, A.J. Brown, Romeo Doubs, Kayshon Boutte, an improved offensive line because you're a year more experienced and you added a first-round talent. Drake May's a year more experienced. Now this offense is potentially elite levels of offensive play here. I'm going Jamari Johnson out of Oregon, tight end, to come in and take over the tight end role from Hunter Henry, a one of my fantasy legends, one of my favorite players in fantasy football from like 5 or 6 years ago. The Philadelphia Eagles at 23 are on the clock. The Eagles spent their first-round pick. Who did they spend their first-round pick on? Mekhi Lemon, wide receiver. They snatched him from the Pittsburgh Steelers. The expectation is that they will trade A.J. Brown to the Patriots post June or July 1st, whatever the date that rolls over. I believe it's June 1st. They bring in Reek Woolen. They unfortunately lost Reed Blankenship in free agency, which is really sad because he was a part of a really fun duo there with him and Cooper DeJean, the exciting whites as they call themselves. But they've already backfilled that. They have Andrew Makuba from Georgia, a second-round pick from last year there to step in. And if their previous hit rate is any indicator, it will be a success. He will step in and be very good there. And so, that we're kind of at a question mark. They drafted a tight end in Eli Stowers. They still have Jalen Hurts. I think offensive line could be a move here. They've got Jordan Mailata and Lane Johnson, but Lane Johnson is older. They draft Markel Bell out of Miami. but I would not hate another offensive tackle. Just because I feel like... Actually, hold up. How big is Mekhi Lemon? I know Devontae Smith is only 6 foot, a little bit on the smaller side, not a large guy at all. Mekhi Lemon's 5'11". We're going to have them go KJ Duff, all right? Because you lose A.J. Brown, who was kind of the size in that wide receiver room, we're going to have them get the monster, the 6'6", 200 and something pound man himself. 6'6", 225 pounds out of Rutgers. And it's just going to be a complete 180 from what the rest of that wide receiver room looks like. He will tower over everyone on that roster, likely, and come in and be a downfield, heave the ball up, and go get it. After you've got Mekhi Lemon, who can be a yak guy, and Devontae Smith, who has a wonderful route tree. That is a very diverse wide receiver room. You've got Saquon Barkley behind that offensive line, who you've already backfilled really well, you hope, getting guys like Markel Bell. I think that sets up really well. You get Eli Stowers. The weapons are great. You've already hopefully drafted well on defense with guys like I mentioned in Andrew Makuba, Quinyon Mitchell, Jalix Hunt, Jahad Campbell out of Alabama. That it's an exciting situation potentially for the Eagles if they hit as they usually do. Wow. The Los Angeles Chargers, I wish I wasn't live so I could clip that because I don't even know if that's embarrassing. It doesn't really feel embarrassing, but it feels like I could get made fun of anyway for almost calling them the San Diego Chargers. Once again, for the second time tonight, I will be playing I'm solo potting for the first time ever, and I'm trying to do that well, and it is challenging when you're used to having 2 people to cover your butt. You just got to talk the whole time. Which, speaking of talking a lot, I'm going to have a sip of water. Delicious. I swear the water from my tap tastes better than any water elsewhere. At 24, the Los Angeles Chargers, after a fantastic draft, best draft in the NFL, obviously, drafting Akeem Mesidor in the first round, drafting Jake Slaughter, a guard/center in the second round, picking up no third rounders, but then in the fourth round, they come back and they get Brennan Thompson, a Mississippi State, as I'm wearing on my shirt, Mississippi State. As you can see, Cowbell. I think there's a Cowbell up there. We really don't have a lot of state stuff. This whole sign over my left shoulder is Mississippi State related. We've got the national championship poster. We are a state pod after all. They draft Brennan Thompson, and we are ecstatic for that. Where do they go here is the question. If there was a wide receiver, I would not have hated a wide receiver because... Actually, no, I would, because we've got Quentin Johnston, Trey Harris, Ladd McConkey, Brennan Thompson. That is a large wide receiver room, many mouths to feed. Hopefully it works. On the offensive line, we return Rashawn Slater, Joe Alt. We add Jake Slaughter. We add Tyler Biadasz from Washington. I don't even think Jack knew how to say that name, if I remember correctly, so I definitely do not know. We've got Oronde Gadsden, last year's 5th-round pick, who played well at times. We obviously have the man himself, Justin Herbert. We've got last year's 1st-round pick, Omarion Hampton. On the defensive side of the ball, we've got Tier Tart. I'm looking at some ages. I believe Dalvin Tomlinson is in his 30s, 32. There are 2 directions I'm leaning here. So we just went Akeem Mesidor. We're pairing him with Khalil Mack. There are 2 directions I'm leaning. Interior defensive lineman. Option 1. There are 3 directions I'm leaning now. Option 1, Amari Washington out of Oregon. The other direction I'm leaning, edge rusher, because Akeem Mesidor is already 25, and Khalil Mack is also old. And so you got to figure that out at some point. We do have Tuli Pelotu, but I would not hate having another 1st-rounder so that in 5 years we extend this year's draft pick. We still have Tuli. Khalil Mack's retired. Akeem walks because he's 30 at the end of his rookie deal. that would be a world that I would not hate to live in, would be having Thule and Damon Wilson or John Henry Daly from Michigan. And then the third and final option I'm looking back is the funnest option, and that is to go running back. Because I think our offensive line will be elite this year. I think Justin Herbert will be elite this year. I hope that our weapons will be able to complement each other and play well this year. I hope that our defense will be improved because of the resources we invested in it with guys like Akeem Mesidor, Genesis Smith in the fourth round, Dalvin Tomlinson in free agency. And so that kind of leaves the last position, running back, where we have a first rounder, but we end up letting Najee Harris walk in free agency, I believe, after an Achilles tear. I believe let me double check that. He's not listed on the starting depth chart. Is he listed on IR? No. So I'm looking at Damon Wilson II out of Miami. No, excuse me, the other Mark Fletcher Jr. out of Miami. And thinking, would it be the worst thing ever to have 2 first-round talent running backs out of the backfield so you've got a double-headed snake behind that offensive line? And saying that, I'm in love with it. I'm not going to lie. It might be the stupidest draft process ever, and I really hope that whoever's in the chat, because it says we have one viewer right now, I really wish it was Jack or JP. I wish they were here to hear this, because saying the words 2 first-round talent running backs out of the backfield is incredible. Like that double-headed snake behind the offensive line that I'm imagining that is going to be, I hope, incredible. Rashawn Slater, like I said, Jake Slaughter. You've got Cole Strange that you brought in from Miami. And then you've got Joe Alt. I'm not saying every one of those players is going to be all-pro or Pro Bowl level, but I think 2 or 3 of them could be. And you've already got Omarion Hampton. Behind him, you've got Keaton Mitchell and Kamani Vidal. I'm not as in love with those names as I am the name Mark Fletcher Jr. And so I'm going to do it. I'm going to give I'm going to give my Los Angeles Chargers a second first-round running back in 2 years. This is terrible, terrible draft process, but it's going to be fun, and I think that defense is going to be really, really good next year. It was fantastic to start the season. I think it's going to be good again. I'm so excited for next year, and having another running back to really, really tear some teams open on the ground excites me very much. At 25, the Dallas Cowboys pick with the Green Bay Packers pick. Earlier this draft, we almost had them go Arch Manning. I believe we had them go secondary instead. Yes, KJ Bolden out of Georgia, safety. And now we're sitting here and we're thinking, well, we're still good on wide receiver unless we want a guy to replace Pickens. We're good on offensive line. 4 of our 5 starters were drafted in 2022 or later. And then our other starter is Terrence Steele, who we brought in from San Francisco, and it's not letting me click on his name to see exactly when he was drafted. But that offensive line is young, and that was something they kind of had to overcome after going through a stretch over the last 4 or 5 years where a lot of their guys were retiring, they were getting old, they were getting injured. Terrence Steele out of San Francisco is 28, drafted in 2020, I believe. That's what it looks like. And so I think offensive line is good. If the Chargers had not just taken running back, I would not be opposed to running back, but we're going to look back at defense. And we're going to think, Rashawn Gary you brought in, you just drafted Malachi Lawrence. Is there a cornerback who's still sitting there as draftable? Not really. Jamari Sharp at 36, like I said, I think I mentioned him earlier for the Cowboys. I'm not going to lie. Which is really tough. Malik Hooker is, like I said, third in his 30s. Jalen Thompson just signed with the Cowboys. He's 27, so not remarkably old. I think this is really a tough spot, but I think we're going to go edge rusher just because we've got a guy sitting here who I like a lot, Damon Wilson, was at Missouri last year, was a fantastic edge rusher paired with his teammate Zion Young last year, transfers to Miami to take over the role that Ruben Bain and Akeem Mesidor vacated. And so I'm going to go Damon Wilson here. It will be the third year in a row that would be. No, it actually would not be. I apologize. I was going to say the third year in a row the Cowboys go edge rusher in the first round, but in 2025 it was the second round. It was Donovan Ezraku. So I'm going to have them go Damon Wilson and make it the second year in a row that they go edge rusher in the first round. Who was their first round pick in 2025? I apologize. Oh, yes. It was Tyler Booker out of Alabama, the guard. That's who it was. All right. At 26, the Kansas City Chiefs are on the clock. Kansas City Chiefs are going to be in a weird season because Patrick Mahomes will be recovering from an ACL tear. They currently have Justin Fields and Garrett Nussmeier at quarterback. But they hope to have an improved offensive line after letting the guy who I don't like because of all his holding penalties, but now I can't remember his name. They let him walk and retain Josh Simmons and Jalen Moore. Creed Humphrey continues to be one of the best centers in the NFL. The Rashee Rice is still TBD whether or not he'll be playing. They've got Xavier Worthy coming back after he was injured and missed a lot of last season. On the defense, they've got George Karlaftis, Chris Jones, Peter Woods, who they drafted in the first round, R. Mason Thomas, who they drafted in the second round, Drew Tranquill, Nick Bolton, Mansard Delane, who they drafted in the first round. I mean, this is a pretty good-looking defense. And then, of course, they still have Steve Spagnuolo. They got Spags still listed DC, so I expect good things from the defense. So we're going to look offense here. And they're another team that needs a wide receiver, unfortunately, in my opinion. And I don't see one sitting there. I see Deuce Robinson sitting there. I don't see them go defensive line because they went defensive line rounds 1 and 2 this year. They went cornerback. It's got to be something offense, I believe. It's not running back. They just signed Kenneth Walker. They just drafted Emmett Johnson in the 5th round, which isn't a lot, but I don't hate it. They also drafted Garrett Nussmeier in the 7th round, and I just want to do 30 seconds on this because I heard a great thought on this earlier today. I hated Jack asked us on our first show after the draft what our winners and losers were, or what our favorite landing spot for a quarterback was, and he said Garrett Nussmeier, and I said I hated that because he would never see the field, and he's just going to back up Patrick Mahomes, and then when he was done. Like, that was his destiny, was just to back up Patrick Mahomes until the Chiefs decided not to extend him or resign him. Maybe they would the first time, but eventually they were just going to say, all right, we're going to go draft someone cheaper. We're done here. And that was going to be his destiny. And I now have actually come around and had the thought that all it takes from Garrett Nussmeier and all the Chiefs probably want is a good preseason from Nussmeier. A good fourth quarter when they're up big or down big. A good week 18 in a game that doesn't matter. A good when Mahomes tweaks something. Like, I'm not trying to manifest some sort of like major injury, but the situation being like Mahomes pulls something in his back and misses 4 weeks. Or Mahomes sprains his ankle and misses 6 weeks. Nussmeier comes in and plays good football in that Andy Reid offense, and then the Chiefs go and they flip that 7th round pick into a 3rd or 2nd round pick. That's exactly what the Chiefs want. To go from a 7th to a 2nd or 3rd is absolutely worth it. And for Nussmeier, it's a great situation. You get to sit behind Mahomes just like Mahomes did Alex Smith. You get to play for Andy Reid, which could be a really, really beneficial situation for him. So I have now come around and decided I do like that landing spot a lot for Garrett Nussmeier. That still leaves us with a tough decision on where to go. I'm going to go Austin Seerveld from Ohio State. I'm gonna do. I'm gonna say this because I think I'm correct. I believe Josh Simmons missed a lot of last year due to family or personal issues, and so didn't. Yeah, 8 games played, 8 games started. Not a complete season from him. And so I'm kind of just drafting Sierveld out of Ohio State, not assuming that Josh Simmons won't work out, but just in case. I'm trying to pull up Josh Simmons' PFF grade just to kind of see how he performed in the game. No, not the safety. I need the tackle from Kansas City to see how he performed in the games that he did play in. It looks like he allowed 2 sacks. Finished the season with 8 penalties. Played weeks 1 through 5, and then 11 through 13. Their other offensive tackle, who I was mentioned earlier, came over from San Francisco, who I believe Kansas City fans like a lot, is Jalen Moore. I'm going to pull him up really quick. And while I do that, I just want to, even if these tackles are all right, the reality is the Chiefs should be trying to surround Mahomes with the best offensive line in the country because you cannot risk him. We saw that this year that when we saw it in the Tampa Bay Super Bowl. They lost that game because the offensive line was bad. We saw that this year. The offensive line was not great. Jawan Taylor is his name, the offensive lineman, who I'm not a fan of because of his excessive penalties. We saw that being an issue. We saw the offense struggle. In part, there were a lot of other factors, but the offensive line was not good this year, and Mahomes got hurt. You can't let that happen again. You have to surround him with, if you can, the best offensive line in the NFL. This guy, Jalen Moore, finished with a 57.1 pass block grade, 22 hurries, 2 hits, 3 sacks, 0 penalties, which I love. I love to see that because I hate it when tackles rack up penalties because, in my opinion, that's the same as giving up a sack. It's not the same injury risk, but it's the same, you're losing so many yards. So I'm going to go an offensive lineman for the Chiefs to further try and protect Mahomes. At 27, the San Francisco 49ers. The 49ers drafted this year with their first-round pick. No one. They did not have a first-round pick. They traded it for? I don't know, off the top of my head. With their second-round pick, they took Deshaun Stribling. Did they trade back? I feel like they traded back. I believe they traded back and took Deshaun Stribling with their what would have been their first-round pick. That's what happened. Mine like a steel trap. Deshaun Stribling out of Ole Miss with their first pick, which was in the second round. With their second pick, which was not in the second round, but in the third round, they had a couple third-round picks. They took Romello Height, a guy that I liked a lot out of Texas Tech, and they took Kalen Black, a running back out of Indiana. They also took Carver Willis, an offensive lineman in the 4th round, Ephesians Prysock, a cornerback in the 4th round. Once again, I don't think they had the same high-profile players, so let's look at what they might do. Offensive line. Trent Williams is getting older. They've got some youth there, a 2024 pick, Dominic Pooney, a 2020 pick, Colton McVitz. George Kittle is injured. Jake Tonjes played well, but let's look at some of the options. Because they just drafted Romello Height, and they still have Mikael Williams and Nick Bosa, who was injured, but I think defensive line, especially the exterior of the defensive line, is good. They they traded for Osa Odighizuwa from the Cowboys. He's 27. I'm just trying to decide if this is a landing spot for Amari Washington. I don't think it is. Instead, we are going to go tight end. We are going to go heir to George Kittle and get Trey'Dez Green from LSU, a tight end, to get Brock Purdy closer to having the same elite weapons that he had for the majority of the beginning of his career. We're trying to surround him like he was surrounded in the Super Bowl year. That is the goal, is to get him weapons again. At 28, the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions spent their first-round pick on... Who did they spend it on? Blake Miller, an offensive tackle from Clemson. That was an absolutely huge draft pick because of the losses they've had due to retirement on that offensive line. I would not hate if they tried to get another offensive lineman. Let me see if there's anyone on the board that piques my interest. Trevor Locke out of Iowa. Did not allow a sack last season. Run-heavy offense. That's kind of actually I don't hate that. Trevor Locke out of Iowa, because, I mean, adding a run comfortable offensive lineman to this offense to try and get Jahmyr Gibbs going again, I do not think would be a bad decision at all. I wish I knew off the top of my head the contract statuses of Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, both of whom are injured. That would be super helpful because there's a safety sitting on the board right here in Jackson Benny from Utah. But I don't know. Let me see if it says if they signed extensions. Signed, activated, suspended. Signed in 2023. Does not say. All right, so I don't know the contract statuses of their two safeties, Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph. But I'm going to go ahead and actually, because they just spent a first-round pick on offensive line, they signed an offensive lineman. I think they can sign another guy, maybe pick up a second-rounder. I'm going to have them go safety and start the backfill process in that secondary because those guys are both hurt, and we've seen that Lions defense can struggle at times when it gets hurt and banged up. The Seattle Seahawks at pick 29. The Seahawks, with their first-round pick, actually made a pick that I liked a lot. They brought in a running back. They brought in Jadarian Price out of Notre Dame. This is a team with not a lot of holes, right? At wide receiver, you still have JSN, Cooper Kupp, and Rashid Shaheed. At offensive line, you've got Charles Cross, who you just extended. You've got Gray Zabel, last year's first-round pick. You've got Abraham Lucas, a third-round pick from 2022, who's outplayed that draft slot absolutely at right tackle. You got Anthony Bradford and Jalen Sundell in the interior. You just drafted a guy. That was only in the fifth round, though, so later. You still have Sam Darnold at quarterback. And on the defense, you've got Leonard Williams, Byron Murphy, Jaron Reed, DeMarcus Lawrence. You've got Devon Witherspoon, Julian Love, Josh Jobe, Nick Amanwari. I kind of think linebacker here. If there's a linebacker, a true linebacker worth the spot, and it looks like there is, Rasheem Biles out of Texas, which would be the second Texas linebacker drafted in the first round. I would not hate that. Once again, I don't know the whole Seahawks roster, but I see a lot of stars on that defense, and then that linebacker core of Drake Thomas, Ernest Jones, and Ukina Nwosu, I'm not as familiar with. And so if I know they have stars everywhere else, I think that it's not unreasonable to go linebacker here and add a guy who might be a star. And then you've got, it's like when me and Jack are playing College Football 26 and our entire team has a little star profile under every player. Very satisfying. That's what the Seahawks are trying to do. They need a star under every player. Every player's got to be a star, an all-pro, Pro Bowl, got to have their all-Madden special abilities. That's the goal, is to have every player have that. At 30, the Buffalo Bills, they traded for DJ Moore. They drafted Skylar Bell in the fourth round, a pick that I loved a lot. They drafted Davison Igbinosun, a cornerback. They drafted TJ Parker, an edge rusher, to go with Bradley Chubb, who they just signed. They signed TJ Gardner-Johnson. They signed Dee Alford. They signed Geno Stone. They signed Austin Corbett. A lot of good moves. Where do they go here? They have Ed Oliver still in that interior. They've got Greg Rousseau. They've got TJ Sanders. An elite. I would not hate them adding another elite edge rusher. It'd be their first edge rusher drafted in the first round since It looks like Greg Rousseau in 2021. And so I think that might actually end up it might actually be where I end up going. John Henry Daly out of Michigan is sitting there. We are going to trust that Josh Allen and DJ Moore work, and that offense is now fixed. With James Cook coming back, I mean, that's gonna be a high floor, at least with him there. And so we're gonna go edge rusher to try and continue to find the guy at edge, hopefully a star, because they've shot on a couple guys. I believe AJ Epineza was a draft pick by them, was not a star. So they are going to continue to shoot for the stars, take another edge rusher in the first round, or their first one since 2019. Actually, Epinesa may have been a first rounder. He's just not on the roster anymore. He's not listed here anymore. But on the roster, they do not have one since 2021. The Baltimore Ravens are on the clock at 31. They drafted a lot of wide receiver this year. Did not love that. I'm going to be honest. I have very little faith in the Baltimore Ravens to draft wide receiver, because if you look at their first round wide receiver, or just in general, their wide receiver hit rates are not high. They drafted Elijah Surratt out of Indiana and Jacoby Lane out of USC. They also drafted Olavavega Ioane out of Oregon, a guard. We're going to go defense here. I'm not sure. Let's see exactly where we're going to go. We've got a defensive interior. Amari Washington from Oregon is still sitting there. And in the secondary, they still have Nate Wiggins, 24 first rounder. Kyle Hamilton, fantastic, 22 first rounder. Malachi Starks, a 25 first rounder. Marlon Humphrey, a 17 first rounder. Chidobe Awuzie, a guy they brought in, signed from Tennessee. So we're going to look to shore up that defensive line. And I mean, they're all young too. Is offensive line. Yeah, I think we're going to go Jamari Sharp to play cornerback. So they brought in Chidobe Awuzie from Tennessee, not this year, but in 2025, so last year. And then they also have Marlon Humphrey, who is going into year 10, I believe, who is how old? Probably 32? 29. Wow. Drafted in 2017 and only 29. That's awesome for him. He must have come into the league young, 19 or 20 years old. He will turn 30 in August. Wow. July. July. Wow. Just messed up my months there. Whatever the 7th month of the year is July. Anyway, he will turn 30. That's really impressive that he was drafted that young. Anyway, I'm still going to have them going cornerback. He'll be 30. That is cornerbacks do not often play past 30. And then also Chidobe Awuzie is also 30. So having a cornerback there, big time. At 32, the final pick and your Super Bowl champions, the Los Angeles Rams. They're just going to go Arch Manning, to back up Ty Simpson in the future. Not actually. They're going to go, they drafted with their one and only first-round pick this year, a pick that I did not like in Ty Simpson. I really thought they were going to get the piece to try and win it, but I guess they think they already have all the pieces they need. Without contracts, this will be a little tough because I just don't know who's coming up and who's going to be walking in free agency soon, because it's going to be hard for them to extend guys. I really wish they could go wide receiver. They did not go. They went CJ Daniels in the round 6 this year, but with Davante Adams being older and Puka Nacua having some of his off-field issues, I really wish there was a wide receiver. And you know what? There is. We're going to do this. We're going to go Deuce Robinson out of Florida State, because if Puka comes back, that's awesome. Puka Nacua is he's not a slot receiver. I mean, he is a little bit. He's 6'2", and plays well in the slot. He plays well in that style. He and Davante Adams are very different. Deuce Robinson is 6'6". We're going to bring him in, and he's going to be an absolutely huge weapon for Matthew Stafford and or Ty Simpson. And so with that, that will be the end of the draft. We're going to go, like I said, Deuce Robinson for the Rams to be the weapon of the future for Ty Simpson. And with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. I'm just going to be done. That was a lot of fun. It went a lot better than I thought. I appreciate the people who were in here chatting with me. If you missed it at the beginning, my two co-hosts who sit here, who sits here where I'm sitting, I usually sit there, and there, JP and Jack, we're both out tonight. One's out of town, and one had a sickness come up 20 minutes before the show started. And I just decided to go live and see what I wanted to do when I decided to do a mock draft for 2017. And here we are. It was 2027, not 2017. It was a lot of fun. I'm excited to look back on this and make fun of it in a year from now. But with that, yeah, thank you for hanging out. If you're seeing this and you're not subscribed, subscribe. We do podcasts a couple times a week, Mondays and Thursdays. We have a lot of fun doing it. We try to know a little bit about what we're talking about, but we really try to have fun with it and engage with viewers and hope y'all have fun. But yeah, we all three of us will see you in the next show. I'm actually going to wait just a sec because I think someone was trying to say something in the chat and they deleted it. But yeah, my throat is sore. I don't know how Josh Pate and other solo podcasters do it. I have immense respect for them. I am a yapper, but only when I get about things that I'm like really, really passionate about, which is drafting, mock drafting. There's a reason we did not have any NBA covered tonight, is because I don't know much about the NBA. I don't watch a lot of NBA. It's really cool. I think the playoffs are really very enjoyable to watch because it's intense. But yeah, we will see y'all in the next one. Peace.